Human babies around the world share many things in common, some including a dependency for their mothers, the need for constant attention, and what is most important to a linguist is their effortless ability to learn a language that is being spoken around them. Unlike adults trying to learn a new language, babies do not need to be taught the rules of grammar. It comes to them naturally. The subject of how newborn infants develop the capability to speak has been intriguing linguists for decades, so much to the point that multiple theories upon how children do acquire a language have been developed. Linguists have not only developed many ideas of how infants learn to articulate the words around them, they also have a conceived time frame of when babies begin the journey to talking. In this video, I will be covering 3 topics about language acquisition: a small setup of the human brain, the theories of language development, and stages of speech within babies to help you understand a few layers of language acquisition. A good place to begin in how a child learns a language is by looking at the brain. The University of San Francisco simplifies the major areas of the brain that have an extreme role in the process of developing a language. Their list begins with the neocortex. This is the largest part of the human brain, and more specifically, is where all the language skills that we have reside. Also residing in the neocortex are 2 areas of the brain located in the left hemisphere. In the left hemisphere is the Broca's area. This area of the brain that controls the larynx, limbs, tongue, and other areas of the digestive and respiratory system involved with oral and facial fine motor skills in the production of speech. It is also associated with speech production and articulation. The third major part of the brain they listed was the Rinke's area. The University of San Francisco describes this area as a critical language area in the posterior, superior, temporal lobe that connects to the Broca's area using a neural pathway. It has been historically associated with language comprehension and processing, whether it be in the spoken or written form. Next, the angular gyrus allows us to associate the language-related information that we have, whether it would be sensory, visual, or auditory. The last part of the brain that they listed was the corpus callosum. This is the part of the brain that maintains connection between the 2 hemispheres of the brain and allows them to communicate with each other. Now that the area of the brain responsible for language production has been discussed, it would be a good time to explore some of the different hypotheses that have been developed to understand language acquisition. Noam Chomsky is the main linguist discussed in John Searle's journey on his revelations in linguistics. In Searle's journey, he explains that Chomsky helped hypothesize the innateness hypothesis, which conjectures that children have the innate capacity to differentiate phonemes, extract words from a stream of language, and process grammar. Also, under this hypothesis, children are determined to have a predisposed understanding of what universal grammar is. The system involving word order, phrase recognition, and phonemic differences is the basic for the theory of innateness of language acquisition. Also mentioned slightly in Searle's journal is Eric Lindenberg, who developed the critical period hypothesis under the innateness hypothesis. The critical period hypothesis states that the language acquisition device, the hardwiring in children's brain, ceases to function. The ability to acquire a language with native fluency declines as childhood progresses, usually disappearing after the age of puberty. The next major hypothesis that was coined to answer the question of language acquisition is the imitation hypothesis. According to a journal from the English Literature Department from the Chinese Culture University, during the imitation hypothesis, children acquire a language by imitating the people that are around them. While this does seem to be the most reasonable explanation to the question behind language acquisition, there are still some weaknesses to it, like the lack of explanation on how productivity and creativity are developed within a child. Also, there are situations where a child is not spoken to and incomplete sentences are usually used. This phenomenon is known as poverty of stimulus. The third hypothesis behind language acquisition is the reinforcement hypothesis. The website IE Languages gives a good, detailed description of what the reinforcement hypothesis is. They have a simple description for this, but they explain it as children acquire a language by positive reinforcement. When a child produces a grammatical statement that is correct, they are rewarded, whether it would be with verbal compliments or something physical, like a piece of candy or high five. If the child does not use an utterance that is grammatically correct, they won't be rewarded in any form. Just like the 2 previous hypotheses, there are some weaknesses behind it. There is a large chance that the child will not pay any actual attention to the mistakes that they are making and continue to use the ungrammatical sentences that they think are correct. Also, there are cases where a parent or guardian does not realize that their child is making a mistake with the way that they are structuring their sentences. The last major hypothesis that is believed to be the answer behind language acquisition is the interactionalist hypothesis, also known as constructivism. This theory is closely related to the innateness hypothesis, meaning it has high details that makes them completely different. In Rod Ellis's journal, he defines this hypothesis by when children acquire a language by their innate language abilities. From this, they extract rules of language from the environment around them and construct rules of phonology, semantics, and syntax in their native language. Unlike the other three hypotheses listed, this theory only has one major weakness, and that is the environment. Every child has a ranging environment behind them when growing up, so it's hard to say if this hypothesis can be proven to be useful when trying to determine the real explanation behind language acquisition. In Ellis's journal, he also briefly explains the predicament sequences that can be found in language development. All based on the age of the child, the communication development can be split into the early months of an infant's life. Starting with 0 to 3 months, the child is in a cooing stage where they are only able to make vowel sounds. Then, from age 4 to 6 months is the babbling stage, where the child alternates between vowel and consonant sounds. At around 6 months old, where the child can understand the meaning of words by looking at the person's mention or the object at hand. When the child is around 1 year old, they are known to be in their first word stage. From here to the next 6 months, around 18 months in the one word stage, they usually communicate and get their point across solely by using one word. After 18 months of life, they begin to enter the two-word stage, creating short sentences by combining two words that may not be related to each other in any way. There are many more areas and topics about the youngest generation's language acquisition. Understanding the human brain, theories about language acquisition, and the first months of life are the beginning layers of many that language acquisition has to offer. After listening to this video, I hope you have a better understanding of what a child might be getting across to you when you think they are only making cute noises.